when it goes live, and I'm not really sure how to do that.
All right,
We're live now? Okay, I don't see me on here. Hold on.
let me know if it ain't me.
Sorry, I'm going to double check and make sure. I've been told we're live. Oh, am I on there? Oh, there I am. Fabulous. All right. All right, everyone. Welcome to our second episode of Outspoken. My name is Samantha Cook. I'm sure a lot of you know I'm actually running for office in Denver, State House District 1. And I have had discussions in the past about why I'm running for office. Honestly, 2020 is just a bizarre year, especially for somebody who has never run for office before. It is an interesting year to have that first experience because the world has literally imploded since I filed for my candidacy in December. So it's definitely been interesting. Issues have evolved. As I've been talking to people, as I've been out walking and talking to people in my community, it's not that the fundamental important issues have changed, it's that people's focus has changed. I'm finding that people are really concerned about public and community safety and personal safety. They're concerned about when they're going to be able to go back to work full time and the actual normal, not this new normal. And people are wondering when their kids can go back to school because shockingly, we need kids to be in school for their parents to be able to go back to work and actually support them. So this week, a lot of us Denver candidates had our debates with our opponents, which was just a lot of fun in and of itself. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the page so I can actually see if I'm on here and see if I get any comments or questions, so you guys don't actually think I'm ignoring you. So we're trying to handle, I just flipped the page. I don't know what just happened. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yay, I can see now. I'm trying to manage multiple sources of technology all at one time, which is not my strong suit. I struggle handling even one source of technology, so this will be fun. But we did have our debates this week, which was really interesting. And it's so funny because a lot of people pay attention to the national issues. They're wondering what's happening with President Trump and Joe Biden, and we're paying attention to Kamala Harris. And as I said last time we were here, people need to realize that a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ticket is a Kamala Harris, Warren Sanders, AOC squad socialist ticket. Joe Biden is just their front man. He is the face of the candidacy to try and appeal to the moderates, but there is nothing moderate about this candidacy at all. And we're seeing, even in the debate questions that we got on a local level, that the ideas of the extremist left that are being perpetuated on a national level are happening right here in our own backyard. So some of the questions we were asked about climate change. And you can go and see all of these debates on Denver 8 on the YouTube channel, and I will post links to all of them. They are wonderful. But we were asked about climate change, and I feel like I gave a decent answer. I got to talk a little bit about it. I personally have limited belief in the narrative of climate change. Do I think that as a society, because of increased activity with vehicles and with businesses and with things that we're putting into the air, that we have an effect on climate? I don't necessarily think we have an effect on weather. My opponent liked to say that she grew up in Florida, and in her childhood, she never saw one hurricane, yet now Florida is being overrun with hurricanes. I haven't had a chance to fact check that yet, but it also really depends on what part of Florida you're in. Some areas see far more hurricanes than others. And then she tried to say that these forest fires that we're seeing in multiple locations across the country are as a result of climate change as well. And I had to kind of call her out on that because we have seen arrests of multiple people in California. I believe there have been some in Colorado. I will have to double check that. But in different areas, arrests of people actually starting these fires. And the reason they are spreading uncontrollably is because climate change activists have stopped people from being able to clear the dead brush in these areas. So this has been pretty much like kindle to these fires, and that is why they are spreading. So it's interesting to me that they continue to perpetuate these ideas that are just not true, and we can't solve problems based on things that are just not true. That our focus gets shifted to things that have no evidence, have no proof of being true, and then we're not able to focus on areas where we actually can make improvements. So I thought that was particularly interesting. We had this thing where it was the lightning round, where we were all only able to say yes or no to questions, but we couldn't expand on our answers. And one of the questions was asked if I would purchase an electric car, and I said no. But it's not because, and I wanted the opportunity to expand on that. It's not because I have anything against electric vehicles. I think living in Colorado, there's a lot, we kind of don't have our elevation, our weather changes in our favor to own electric vehicles. But I'm someone, I work in the wedding industry, so I drive up to the mountains multiple times a year. We're talking 30 to 40 times a year. And me having an electric vehicle is just not feasible. So it's not something that would work for my personal situation. But I think if that's something that you want to do, then I think that you should. I think that's awesome. We were also asked about gun control. And of course, even with this situation where these two sheriffs in, I don't remember what city now, they were ambushed and shot at point blank range by this individual that approached the car and just shot them for no reason. The narrative, I believe it was Joe Biden, he came out and said that we need more gun control, which absolutely blows my mind. I don't know why we have to constantly go to gun control, because there are millions and millions, I believe upwards of hundreds of millions of guns that are owned in this country. Some people have multiple firearms that will never, ever, ever be aimed at another human being. Like 99.9% of those guns will never be aimed at another human being. It doesn't matter who owns the gun. It matters what they intend to do with it. And somebody who wants to harm another human being, they don't need a gun to do it. We saw this incident, I believe it was in Lancaster, where this lady was having an issue. She was a black woman, was having an issue with, I don't know if it was an ex-boyfriend or somebody, a member of her family. I meant to pull up the article, but he came to her residence. He was harassing them and they were not feeling safe. So they called the police. They called the police to come and remove this individual, this man, from the residence. And he charged at the officers with a knife. And they shot him, which they had the right to do. And guess what? Lancaster, Pennsylvania, is it Pennsylvania? They saw riots, they saw destruction because of this. So this man had a weapon that was not a gun that attacked these officers. And but we still, every time a gun is involved, it comes back to this narrative that we have to have gun control. And so to me, there's no consistency to that, because statistically, most guns are not used against other people. What it comes down to is a mental health issue. Colorado has some of the highest depression rates in the country, which blows my mind, because we have some of the most beautiful outdoor spaces. We have a very active society here in Colorado. That was one of the things that attracted me to moving here, was how many people are outside all the time, and there's so many parks. So you would think with so much open space and so much sunshine that we wouldn't have this depression issue. But I think that if we're having that, and that's something that's increasing, and we have some of the top rates in the country, that we need to figure out what the problem is there and stop trying to control law-abiding citizens from purchasing the thing that's going to protect their family. Because as we're seeing, that's becoming more and more necessary. And so when they asked us about this gun control, I did address the mental health issue. And I said, even as this pandemic has happened and or not the pandemic, as the riots have been happening, as people are not feeling as safe, gun control sales have multiplied. People are purchasing guns at a significantly higher level, and they're recognizing how strict our gun laws really are. People are surprised to find out that you cannot just walk in and purchase a gun, that you have to provide a valid ID, that you have to have a background check, and you have to wait usually more than a couple of days for that background check to be cleared before being able to pick up your firearm. So we have the laws in place. We have to make sure that those laws are enforced. And I know that the Democrats in Colorado put forth a bill for a safe storage law. And I, of course, would love to see everybody needs to be able to be storing their firearms at a responsible level, at a responsible way. But I'm not for government being able to come into your home and tell you how to store your personal property. So what it comes down to is the fact that anybody that wants to do harm on another human being is going to do that regardless of what the tool in their hands is. And if they don't have guns available, they will find another way to do it. And the only people that are going to be impacted are law-abiding citizens who will now have less means of protecting themselves from these people who already want to break the law. That was a bit of a tangent, but I just feel like it's really important for people to understand this. Another thing that came up was the abortion issue. This year in Colorado, we have a ballot measure, finally, where the people of Colorado can vote on this issue and make their voices heard. And I think the Democrats in Colorado are really nervous about the fact that the majority of people might actually want to ban late-term abortion. It would be the ballot issue is Proposition 115, and it's going to ban abortion after 22 weeks. Some of the misinformation that's being spread about this from opposing groups is that it does not allow room for women who are, that their life is in danger, or if there are fetal abnormalities, or there's something in the situation that could be endangering to either the life of the mom or the baby, and there's no exceptions for rape or incest. These things are not true at all. There are exceptions in there, but what it really comes down to is the fact that this, a woman at 22 weeks is more than halfway through her pregnancy. She is halfway there. She has had plenty of time to decide whether or not she wants to be pregnant and whether or not she has a plan for getting to the end of her pregnancy and whether or not she plans to keep the baby or put the baby up for adoption. So she's had months and months and months. We don't need to wait until this baby's fully formed, this baby is viable, to make that decision. Because at that point, I'm going to get a little graphic. I'm not going to get too graphic, but late-term abortion is lethal injection into the heart of the baby, and then they are removed with forceps. And a lot of people don't know that, and that's why I feel the need to articulate exactly what late-term abortion is. A lot of people don't realize that Colorado is one of only 7 states in the entire country that allows for late-term abortion, and the United States is only one of 3 countries that allows for abortion up until the moment of birth. The other 2 countries, I believe, are North Korea and China. And as I've said before, we really probably should be careful about how similar to places like China and North Korea that we want to look like. Another point I want to make about this bill is at 22 weeks, this woman is involved with her physician. She's got a medical team. If there are risks to the life of the mother or there are fetal abnormalities, these are things she is finding out with her doctor. These are things that her doctor is advising her of, and they are coming up with a medical plan to address them. If early delivery is necessary, that can happen where both the mother and the baby are treated as 2 separate patients. No doctor is going to force her to continue with a pregnancy that is endangering or that is not healthy for either of them, and she's going to have the option to deliver this baby if that is what she decides, what her doctor advises her of. So that option is there. So abortion clinics are not needed for that purpose. So it really just comes down to the fact that the Democrats in Colorado, they don't want restrictions at all. It doesn't matter what it is, because an abortion clinic doesn't care if your reason is that your life is in danger or that there are fetal abnormalities. They will take you in and give you an abortion for any reason. It doesn't matter what it is. So the narrative just doesn't match. So we're not restricting abortion completely. We're just putting limits on it and saying, hey, you've had plenty of time to make this decision. Now it's time to come up with another plan. Just a heads up, I do need a password on this.
362.
Okay, sorry, I lost my screen. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because that initiative will be on the ballot. Another one that will be on the ballot this year is the Gallagher Amendment. And it asks to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. And I said in my debate that this will increase your property taxes. And to expand on that, this will increase property taxes. These taxes will be passed down to renters. And the Democrats keep talking about how they want to help with the homeless problem and help people afford their housing and bring rent costs down. But they keep talking about ways that they're going to increase your taxes and pass those taxes on down to renters. If it's in a store and they want to tax a product like they do with the additional tax on cigarettes and tobacco products, that tax gets passed down to somebody. And it was interesting. As I said, I'm running for office. I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman, out while I was walking in this district, and he said that he is somebody that has typically voted Democrat in the past, but that, there are a lot of things that are concerning about his party right now that he doesn't relate to. And he asked me specifically about the Gallagher Amendment. I said, I don't want to see it repealed because at this time, especially, people are already struggling when, I don't think it's fair that we add on another tax when people are still trying to recover from being shut down for the last 6 months. And it's another unchecked tax hike where we don't have to be asked permission and they can just raise property taxes at will. And he went into this spiel about building, construction and housing development and how, these costs need to be covered and whatnot. And it occurred to me that sometimes as a more conservative thinker, we don't articulate our position very well. And sometimes, people on the left think that we're kind of all or nothing. So I had to put to him, it's not that I'm against raising taxes. We all want to be able to contribute to our society, and we want to help make things better, make our roads better, make our education better, and be able to put money toward programs that we all take advantage of, like education and law enforcement and our fire departments and whatnot. What we're tired of is having these taxes raised constantly and not having the money put towards what they say they're going to put it towards. And this is why people keep voting no on, tax increases, because he himself brought up the fact that this marijuana tax was increased, but none of it seemed to really go towards education, which it was specifically supposed to go towards. So when you keep asking us for tax increases and it doesn't go towards what you say it's going to go towards, then we're just going to keep voting no, because, the trust has been damaged there. There's no trust in us saying that, yeah, you can keep taking my money and using it and not using it for what you say you're going to use it for. I'm going to ask that you start using the money that I've already given you for what you say you're going to use it for, and then we'll talk about more. So I think that kind of resonated with him, and it made me realize that as a conservative thinker, that we need to articulate, it's not that we don't want to contribute to these programs or contribute to society, it's that we want to make sure that when we do, it's going to go toward the thing that you say it's going to go toward. And that is one of my goals in being in office, is creating that transparency and letting people know that if we do need to ask you for more money, that it's for a specific reason and that it's going to go toward that thing. I mean, what a concept in government. So anyway, it was definitely a very interesting discussion. I go to the Denver 8 YouTube channel and see all of those debates. We have 9 candidates in Denver this year. We're really hoping to flip some seats because we have no balance in government in Colorado right now. All 3 branches of government are controlled by the left, and that really, that means all issues are focused on, left-leaning, bigger government, even socialist-leaning policies, and we need to get some balance back. We need to flip some seats in the House and in the Senate and really try and have 2 sides of the conversation and not just one. Let's talk a little bit about COVID, what's going on here. Oh my gosh. So it's been interesting. My opponent liked to continue to talk about how Governor Polis has just been following the science. And honestly, like I pulled up a few graphs from, let me see if I can pull them up real quick. These were from about a week ago, but I haven't had a chance to get the updated ones. As we know, the initial goal was to slow the spread. It was 15 days to slow the spread. And then it was to flatten the curve. And then it was to reach a certain level of testing per day and per week. So I'm looking at this one here. I don't know if I can, if I can share that with you, but there's a graph. I don't know how to share it with you guys. Can you pull it up? Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. Sorry. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So on this graph, the blue, it's a little small. So the orange is the positive tests. The blue, I believe, is where we've been tested, but it's not detected. But you can see this dotted line right here where it's the Denver weekly testing goal. And if you look where it starts, that's about June, at the beginning of June. So our testing goal, we've been reaching our weekly testing goal since June. So we've already reached one of these landmarks, one of these benchmarks that Governor Polis said we had to reach. We reached it 3 months ago. And then this one, I pulled up the other one here. This is the daily testing goal, I believe. And as you can see, it also has been met since the beginning of June. So we've already done this. He said, we need to slow the spread. We need to flatten the curve. And now we need to reach these testing goals. We've reached the testing goals. And I'm just going to pull up one more graph here because, people are really concerned about getting their kids back to school. If you see over here, this little tiny orange speck that's almost undetectable, and even the one next to it, the deaths for ages 0 to about 20 years old is almost non-existent. It's almost non-existent. The orange is the percentage of COVID deaths by age. And you can see this big, huge line at the end here. This is 80 years and older. The blue represents the percentage of Denver population that is of that age group. And the orange represents the number of COVID deaths in that age group. So you can see the tiniest percentage of population is ages 80 and above, but the majority of the deaths are significantly higher. And these are all from about a week ago. And then I was reading, you can switch it back to me. We're still figuring out how to make this run a little more smoothly, but it's good. It's good. So I was reading an article in 9 News this week that it was from May, I believe, where they were talking about the stand-up hospital in the Denver Convention Center that was put up because they were convinced we were going to have this surge in cases. Well, this hospital has been up, I think, finished since the beginning of May. It has never been used. It is costing taxpayers $60,000 a day to keep it open. And in this article, they said that they wanted to maintain this hospital and keep it there because they were expecting a spike in cases. They said that some state models based on COVID cases, they were going to see a spike in cases by September 23rd. Well, guess what? It's September 27th today or 28th. I'm not sure. Oh, it's the 27th. And we are 4 days past that. So unless there have been a spike in cases by the thousands, and there are literally bodies lining the streets, none of the models have played out as predicted. This thing has become so political and so based on fear that when you look at this data and the statistics, it is hard not to see the fact that this is about power and control, about keeping people isolated, keeping people scared, because our governor continues to call it a deadly virus. And of course, we don't want to see anybody die from this. All deaths are tragic. It really is. And I feel for people. The Democrats like to think that the only way that you can be sympathetic to people who, to deaths of COVID is if you have personally had somebody close to you die of COVID. That's not true. Like, you don't have to have a personal experience with someone dying from a particular cause to be sympathetic to that and understand that, yes, there is a possibility of dying from something. There's a possibility of dying when you go out on the road and you drive. There's a possibility of dying when you catch the flu. There's a possibility of dying with being, tripping and falling on the sidewalk. We have to be reasonable about our approach to these things. And what has happened is we have created crises, I don't know, in other areas. We have seen a drastic increase in suicides. We have seen a drastic increase in drug overdoses. And these are things that are happening because people are locked in their home. They're isolated from their resources. I was having a discussion recently with somebody, maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, that said that AA meetings had been closed, but in Colorado, alcohol stores and weed stores are still open. So you're allowing people, you're not allowing people the resources that they need to stay healthy in other ways, but you're keeping things open that contribute to the detriment of these people. So please explain that to me. So we have created crises in other areas. We have created so much damage, and we're not allowed to talk about that. My opponent, Susan Lontaine, retweeted recently this, and I don't have the graphic. It was some kind of study. I don't know how legitimate this study was because it was pretty atrocious, saying that Republicans are okay with X amount of deaths from COVID. And it was pretty, this perpetuating the idea that anybody's okay with any kind of death is pretty appalling to put on people. We've seen so much division in our society, perpetuating these narratives that, we're not moral or we're not caring if we don't follow a certain narrative. But I, pose the question, how many deaths in suicide are okay? How many deaths in drug overdoses are okay? What about these people's lives? What about these people's livelihoods? 60% of the business closures in Colorado are going to be permanent because of these shutdowns. Do their lives matter? Do we have to know somebody specifically whose business has been closed permanently to care about their livelihood? So the damage that is being done is almost irreparable, and we have got to start standing up against these things and being honest about the science. And it's really interesting to me, in this particular debate, we were asked, does life begin at conception? And my opponent said no. And I said yes. So it's interesting to me to have somebody continue to spread this idea of following the science for coronavirus and not be able to articulate when a woman becomes pregnant, when that thing in her stomach goes from being dead to alive. Like, at what point in time in the pregnancy does that happen? What science indicates that you become pregnant with something that's dead and then suddenly it becomes alive? And what indicator are you looking for to confirm that it's something that's alive? So please tell me which science we are supposed to be following, or the science of climate change, or the climate change causing these fires, yet being able to point to a dozen or more people starting fires. So please tell me, it seems like we're pretty selective on the science that we are following right now. And right now, the science that we choose to follow is creating more problems than it is actually solving, because as the point that I have made multiple times, where we think we have saved a life from COVID, we have replaced it at least one time, if not multiple times over, by a death from something else caused by isolation, caused by shutdowns, caused by livelihoods being destroyed. And, we've got to start being honest about these things, because it's really, really, it's sad and it's devastating. And as I said, I believe we really need to start standing up for these things. So I'm sure a lot of people saw that video of the Ohio mom at the football game being, I don't know how else to say, attacked and handcuffed and tasered in front of her own children for not wearing a mask at her son, who was in 7th grade, for his outdoor football game. And people keep saying, well, she needed to follow the rules. Well, I have this image here. If we want to pull that up, let me know when it's available. Good. Okay. So these are the Ohio rules for mask wearing. It says, at an indoor location that is not a residence, so thankfully you don't have to wear one in your house, outdoors, but unable to maintain 6-foot social distance from people who are not household members. if you look in the video, I'm not going to play it because it's actually kind of painful to watch. She's sitting with her family members. All of the family units are separated out on the bleachers and they're outdoors. And so they're separated socially from people that they're not related to. So she was following the rules and she did not have a mask on. This officer that approached her didn't give her even a chance really to, put on a mask or to even discuss what the actual rules were. He just started going after her, and it was really appalling. And I've had people ask me, well, what's the right thing to do in this situation? Honestly, I don't know, because I really do think that we need to start standing up against these things, or we're really not going to have the opportunity to stand up for it in the future. My feeling in that particular situation, if my children were there, it would be really difficult for me to create a scene like that, because you could see her son that was sitting behind her was just hysterical, and guaranteed that child is going to be traumatized for the rest of his life. So in that situation, I might just go along with it for the sake of my children. But in most instances, there was another one in, interesting, Moscow, Idaho, where there was a group of people singing outside, and one of the gentlemen, there was a few people that I think were picked out of the crowd for not wearing masks, singing outside, and he was arrested, and he was saying, this is not okay, this is not our country, and it's true, and he went along peacefully, which is fine. But people need to understand, because I've just been seeing, well, you just need to obey the laws. You tell all these other people not to resist arrest, and you just need to obey the laws. And thankfully, I had somebody on my page make this point, and he knows who he is. He likes to keep me on my toes and play devil's advocate sometimes, but it helps me to think through these things. But he made the point, a law is not a law is not a law. Like, just because somebody, in our government puts something out there and says, this is what you have to do, we have a constitution that protects us and that we have to adhere to. And if you're putting laws out there that don't adhere to our constitutional guidelines and our foundation, then it's okay to question that and to say, you know what, I don't think that this is something that you can enforce with a police officer, which takes us to another level of, a whole new entity of enforcement potentially being created. But just because our government puts something out there, our governor is putting out something, they're saying that wearing a mask is now the law. Well, laws have to be passed, and they have to be voted on. So it really is this gray area, but ultimately we live in the United States of America. We don't, making a wide sweeping decision for everybody, especially a medical decision, and saying that I don't care what your age is, I don't care what your underlying health conditions are, I don't care if you've been traumatized and wearing a mask increases that trauma or triggers that trauma, I don't care what your feelings are, even on wearing a mask, everybody has to wear a mask or you're going to be arrested, is absolutely anti-American, and people need to start standing up for this stuff, against this stuff. So I just want to bring up one more thing that I saw. This lovely gentleman, Kyle Clark at 9 News. Honestly, if I can bring up this image, this is a tweet from Kyle Clark recently. And honestly, I think the majority of Colorado would love to donate Kyle Clark to CNN. You can have him. It's fine. Because I know that that's really his dream job right there. But honestly, this was in regards to Antifa, people showing up people's houses. And I know this is on a different subject than COVID, but we have plenty of time to talk about COVID. He says, shame to think there are people cowering in the suburbs, cleaning their guns, peeking through the blinds, wondering if every person of color outside is Antifa. If you're afraid to come into Denver because of talk radio fear-mongering, you're missing out on a lot. Kyle, people are not looking out their window assuming that every person of color is part of Antifa. People are concerned because, as we've seen in multiple cities across the country, that these riots and loot and this violence is showing up in our neighborhoods. So I'm not looking out my window wondering if anybody that walks by that's black is a problem. I'm suspicious of almost anybody that walks by my house. You can tell people that are just out walking their dog, and you can tell people that might be out to cause a problem, and it's not because of the color of their skin. Because let me tell you, I came face to face with Antifa on July 19th at our pro-police rally, where this giant white guy, blonde hair, wearing a blue shirt and a mask, came up to me and threatened multiple times to slit my throat. Okay, so he was definitely not someone of color. He's not somebody that I would assume anything about either way based on the color of his skin. He came up to me and threatened me. So, putting out tweets like this, putting out garbage like this is exactly why our country is divided. It is exactly why people think that everybody that is white is scared of people who are black, which is absolutely not true. And putting things out like this is so divisive and so hurtful. And like I said, if you really want to go work for CNN, we invite you to do so, like ASAP. I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I haven't seen any questions pop up, but honestly, I really haven't been paying that close of attention, so I apologize. I have a lot to say. Next time we do this, I want to talk about some of these initiatives that are going to be on the November ballot in Colorado. I'm going to go in more detail about it, but I want to, if I can find one more image here. This is a flyer that is going around that the Democrats are putting out. I don't know what the first initial, I don't know what the first part of the phrase is, but it says, for a stronger future. Well, Amendment B is the repealing of the Gallagher Act. They want you to vote yes, which would increase your property taxes. The cigarette, tobacco, and nicotine products tax, that's going to affect small businesses by taxing tobacco products. And they say that the tax increase is going to go toward funding preschool. But I was just at a forum recently where some very educated people broke down these initiatives for us. And even if preschools see any of this money ever, the preschools wouldn't see it for at least 2.5 years, if ever, because there's nothing in the language of this measure that says it has to go to preschool. The national popular vote, they want us to get rid of the electoral college. Of course, they want you to vote yes on that and give our voice to California. The restoration of gray wolves, they want you to vote yes. I know that's not something a lot of us think about, but with our friends in Grand Junction and more rural areas on the western slope, reintroduction of these gray wolves is really going to impact them and really be a danger to their livestock and some of the other animals in the ways that they, conduct their farming business. The paid family and medical leave insurance program, they want you to vote yes on that. That will be a $294 million tax hike. It is not a program that is meant to succeed. Even if only 5% of people take advantage of it and women only take 9 weeks of this paid family and medical leave, it will be bankrupt within 2 years. So I'm going to research more of these and provide a more in-depth look at these measures, but when they say it's for a stronger future, they are outright lying to you. So we're going to go into that more next time. I appreciate you coming and listening to me rant and rave on Outspoken today, but I think it's, like I said in the past, it's really a time for us to go from being the silent minority or the silent majority to the vocal majority, because people need to understand that most of us are still for the Constitution, we are still for limited government, and that we still have a voice, and we want to see reason. We want to see reason in control of our country and our state. So I appreciate you guys. Tune in next time. We'll probably do this again in about a week. Let me know what questions you have, but I appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.